couple of years ago, a really good friend of ours was learning to ballroom dance. She told us that they taught her that the lead dancer, most often the man, is called the picture frame, and their partner is called the picture. She said that the main role of the lead dancer or the picture frame is to make the picture look beautiful. How cool is that? I've got a clip to show us. It's all good, play it away. What do you reckon? He did a pretty good job, hey? The lead has to be okay with fading into the background somewhat so that his partner becomes the star or the hero. It's similar with picture frames. The very definition of a picture frame is to be a decorative edging for a picture, intended to enhance it, make it easier to display, and to protect it. The frame enhances, protects, and makes the picture look beautiful. What frames our picture of God? The framework is so very important. It's the thing that ties everything together. It's the thing that holds everything in place. The framing starts, finishes, and surrounds our picture of God, so it's vital. The trouble is when the framing isn't right, then it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. You know, it doesn't enhance it, it doesn't protect it, it doesn't make the picture look beautiful. I'm told that it's a little bit like hitting a golf ball. I'm told by the professional golfer on staff, Mr. Carl Seifaloy, that if you hit the ball as it connects, just slightly off, that by the time it comes to a stop, that trajectory increases, and by the time it stops, it's way off. Now, clearly, Carl, you've seen this happen because it would never have learned from experience, I'm sure. If our framing isn't right, over time, our picture can get really off track, really messed up. I think about our discipleship graphic. I love the journey that it portrays, one from being unawake to God, unawake to all He wants for our life and all He has to offer, to waking up, becoming aware, walking towards Him, sharing Him with others and making a difference. None of it would matter. None of it would make any sense without its framework. None of it would change us or make a difference. Have you got that graphic slide, Breno? None of it would make a difference unless we know that he loves us. And even more than that, he is love. And this whole story of the Bible is framed, is wrapped up in that reality. When we know that, doesn't it change how we read this book? How we interpret its words, how we learn from it, and not only that, but how we live and care for and treat the people around us. I watched a little video that Rob Bell produced a while ago, and he said these words: how we begin and end a story determines the story we tell. Did you get that? How we begin and end a story determines the story we tell. Often when we tell God's story, we begin in sin. We begin with Adam and Eve's fall into sin, and we end in heaven. But that is not the story. His story begins in creation. It begins with God combining, merging, joining the divine with the natural, with us. And it ends in Revelation the very same way. This book, God's instruction manual on how to live and love and learn, is bookended in purpose, in love, and in relationship. The framing of his message is all about connection between God and us. So often we think that God's plan from the beginning was to save us, but that was actually plan B. Plan A is that we would remain in this amazing garden in a meaningful relationship with God. That life would be immersed in joy and peace and unconditional love, and that we would never have to experience pain or death or heartache or misery. Rob Bell says, I believe Jesus' story is first and foremost about the love of God for every single one of us. It is a stunning, beautiful, expansive love, and it is for everybody, everywhere. That's the story, church. For God so loved the world. That's why Jesus came. That's his message. That's where life is found. And so often the plot has been lost. But you know what, church? Today it is time to reclaim it. If the Bible, if God's story is framed this way, if it begins in Genesis and ends in Revelation the same way, with this awesome picture of relationship with God, how does that change our story? How does that frame or reframe our picture of God and his story? One of the things that has always awed me about God is that he's this amazing God of creation, that he is awesome and powerful, that he not only creates light, but is light, that darkness cannot even exist in his presence. He is everywhere with everyone during every minute of every day. He is a God who is incredibly creative. He spoke the sun and moon and plants and fish and birds and animals and us, people, into existence. He is powerful enough to create thunder, but gentle enough to create petals. Did you know that we would need a ruler 5.88 trillion miles long to measure things in God's universe? It is that vast. To give you an idea of its size, scientists say that if the Milky Way galaxy was the size of the United States of America, our solar system would be the size of a $2 coin. Just the Milky Way galaxy, the galaxy that we live in, is 100,000 light years across, and it consists of billions and billions of stars. In fact, if you could count all the stars at a rate of 1 per second, it would take us 2,500 years to count them. When we read the creation account, one of the things that I love is that at the end of each day, he celebrated what he had done, what he created. And I think that this is something that we so often forget to do. We get busy and we get focused on what isn't going well, and we forget to see what he does do, what he provides, what he prevents, what he gives to us each and every day. I saw it at the SDA church-wide camp that was run just last month in Rotorua. The program began on Friday evening, but a few of us had to be there from Wednesday to get things organised. Our family had been in Wellington, and so we left Wellington Wednesday morning to get there by the afternoon to set up and start working. All was going really well, but as we got closer and closer to Rotorua, it was getting darker and darker. As we drove north, we realised that we were driving into nasty weather. Sure enough, we arrived to set up camp, and it was raining. Definitely not my favourite thing to do, but something I've done plenty of times. So we just got to it, we set up in the rain, and we did it as quickly as we could. Unfortunately, the pigs down there had decided that the sites that we were camping on would be a great place to root around and dig up all the grass. Sadly, the reality is that no grass and lots of rain produces mud, copious amounts of mud. We were also situated on an incline. So let's just say that our site became the site of a flowing mud river. If that wasn't bad enough, Thursday saw the arrival of heavier rain and a whole lot of wind. Wind so strong that night it tore the fixings that were screwed into our caravan straight out of the wall and bent the metal poles of the awning in half. And we were the lucky ones. As we drove around the site the next day, we saw ripped tents, ripped gazebos. One awning had completely flipped over the top of the caravan it was connected to, poles scattered everywhere. You can imagine that when the sun came out on Sunday, we were very happy campers. But you gotta love human nature and our crazy weather patterns at these days. Because on Monday, it was so incredibly hot. And people began to complain again, but this time about the heat. As much as it would have been easy to join in, I had to make a conscious decision. I had to make a choice to be grateful for that sun, because that sun dried out that river and it made our camping experience a whole lot more enjoyable. After celebrating each day, the Bible says there was evening and morning the first day. There was evening and morning the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day. There was evening and morning. But on the seventh day, it's different. Genesis chapter 2 and verses 2 to 3 says, "By the seventh day, God completed his work and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made." No evening and no morning. Why? The seventh day, this Sabbath that God created, was the epitome of all he had created. It was the crowning glory, and yet it was also the personal reality. Through creation, God gifted so much to mankind, to Adam and Eve, to us. It says at the end of Genesis chapter 1 that all he created was for us. Everything was his gift to us, and he gave us authority over it. But Sabbath is the ultimate gift. In the Sabbath, we get to celebrate that he has done it all, that he has done everything for us, and he has gifted it all to us. And all he asks in return is that we spend time with him, that we're grateful, that we celebrate the gifts, and that we value and live in relationship. Could it be that God's plan was that Sabbath would never end? No morning, no evening. That we would work, play, eat, do relationship, all within the context of Sabbath rest. How does this reframe Sabbath for us? He's the very definition of awe and wonder. Yet he is the God who is deeply personal. He's the God who cares about the tiny details in our lives. With all that he's got going on in the world, the war, the hatred, the famine, the lack of water, the slavery, the poverty, I often forget that he still sees me. He still cares about every detail in my life. And this enormous universe that God created, a small portion is the Milky Way galaxy. And in that Milky Way galaxy, we are but a speck, so seemingly insignificant, a mere dot in the great scheme of things. But in what seems such insignificance, we are known and we are prized by an amazing God who created for us, who sent for us, and who knows us. Just like he knows each of those billions of stars, he knows us each by name. He knows the number of hairs on our heads. He knows our deepest hurts, our deepest fears. He knows the things that we worry about the most. He knows us. He loves us. He chooses us. And more than anything, he wants a relationship with us. Over the years, God has encouraged, he has poked, he has prodded, he has moved, he has sometimes even pushed me outside my comfort zone. And he's done that in lots of different ways, but none more so than right now, leading the team here at Papster. The really good thing about sitting outside my comfort zone is that it causes me to lean even more into him, into his purpose, his calling, his love, and his vision. My first day leading the team, was Monday the 18th of December. The staff were tying up loose ends that day. They were cleaning up and they were getting ready for Christmas. I had some really tough jobs that first day. I had some really hard conversations to have. Possibly the toughest I've had in my 12 years working here at Papster. And so I was getting them done. It had been a rough morning. There had been tears, of course. And I was about to join the age group team up in the youth room. You see, they'd been planning for 2018. And when I arrived, they shared the passage that God had laid on their hearts for our young people this year. And we were celebrating that together when Tracy said that she thought I'd like to know that Fee had just shared with the team that she had felt God ask her to pray especially for me that past week. And in fact, she had asked that they stop their meeting and they pray for me right then. They were praying for me when I was struggling, and they had no idea that I was. I'm so grateful for the team here at Papster. Men and women who hear the Spirit and obey even when they don't understand why. These men and women are the people who lead us. They didn't know what was going on for me that morning, but God did. And it overwhelms me to once again be reminded that he sees me amongst everything else. God sees me in the middle of this enormous universe. He sees me and what I'm dealing with. He sees me and he cares enough to get a whole bunch of people praying for me. And it's not the first time, but I so easily forget. But he so graciously and generously and lovingly reminds me that when he calls me, he is with me and he is ahead of me and he is behind me, holding me up. He is the very definition of generosity and compassion. When Jesus was on earth, he modeled his deeply personal side. His interactions with people showed compassion, no judgment. He touched, he related, he invited, and he loved those who were unclean and mean, despised, judged, unimportant, and unloved. And because he did, he was judged, he was hated, he was tortured, and he was ultimately killed. This year for Christmas, our family went to my brother's place. He lives in the small Kapiti Coast town of Waikawa Beach. It's about an hour north of Wellington. While we were there, we decided that we would go down to Wellington for the day to check out Te Papa. We hadn't been there in such a long time, and Glenn wanted to take us again. The standout that day was the Gallipoli exhibition. I believe it's been on display there for over a year now. And to be honest with you, I have to admit, I'm not really into war. I don't do war movies, I don't do war history, I don't, investigate it or find out more about it. And there were huge lines for this exhibition that day. So if I was on my own, I'd have probably given it a miss. But my brother is very persuasive. He had seen it and he was really keen for us to go. He was certain that we would love it. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but I've got a video that looks at the creation of some of it. So take a look at this.
So possibly like the magazine cover images of the Vietnam War, the single arresting image, the large-scale visual. The idea that should you take a person and increase them in scale, there's a natural desire as a human to explore them with your eyes, discover what's unique about them in their oversized state. What started to formulate in my mind and what the guys immediately started sparking of was that these characters that emote at a depth of detail and emotional intent like nothing we'd undertaken before.
What fascinates me about this exhibition is it's personality driven, and so just simply walking around and seeing each of the personalities is a wow, and then you suddenly realize that that's simply an introduction to a story.
To try and capture an exact representation of the person was beyond challenging and in some ways inappropriate. We therefore made the decision to do a nationwide casting call to find the people that best represented the photographs of the soldiers and of Lottie. We photographed them, we digitally scanned them, we then face cast them, we arm cast them. We built up a significant library of artefacts that represented that individual reenacting this historical person. We then clean up the scans in the 3D department, and then we set to task one of our larger 3D printers. It builds a three-dimensional replica of the different components, then begins the process of sculpting. And when you look at the sculptures, you'll appreciate the depth of focus required to sculpt every detail that is in the human face and body. The sculpture then goes into the mould shop, and we undertake a process called silicon matrix mould. Into this, you pour the silicon that replicates the human skin. and then into the paint shop. The paint shop is where we do all of the painting of our silicon sculptures. The sculpture moves through to the hair department. It requires us to put stubble actually into the face, one hair at a time. And when all that is done and we finally assemble the object, those components will hopefully look real. Showing these soldiers at scale and sharing the intent of these people give them presence and power and cause a moment of reflection.
Pretty amazing, hey? Peter Jackson and the Weta team put this exhibition together, and it's one of those things that truly leaves you speechless. They created 5 scenes, including 7 soldiers and a nurse. After each scene, their stories are told. And you're taken on a journey where you get to see the food, hear the sounds, watch movies, see the battle unfold in and around you. And when you leave, you have to just sit for a while, contemplating. What struck me most were those soldiers that they created. They are 12-foot models, frozen in time and in action. They are the size that God created Adam and Eve, and they are incredible beings. But as wow as the size and magnitude of these models are, as much as they made me think of what God created by just speaking into existence, compared to dozens of people spending countless hours for more than a year, what struck me most was every tiny, perfect detail. You would swear that these models are real, and you're half expecting them to come to life, to speak or move or complete the action that they are in the middle of. You can see every hair coming out of their skin, every bead of sweat, their veins, their muscles, the wounds that they have been inflicted with. They are incredible, stunning pieces of art. And I couldn't help but think of God. The awe, majesty, wonder, magnificence of someone that can create by just speaking. But also the reality that he thinks of every single, seemingly unimportant detail. Because all of it, all of us, matter to him. Something I discovered that day that I wasn't aware of is just what a horrific battle Gallipoli was. It went on for more than 9 months, and tens of thousands of men died, more than 130,000 in total, battalion after battalion walking to their death, and double that number wounded. At the end of the 9 months, they knew it had all been in vain. They didn't win. No one won really. Because even though the Turks defended their territory, more than double of their men died. And I couldn't help but think of us. God creates this amazing world with the opportunity to be in never-ending connection with him, but we think that we know better. We wander away, we go off track, we actually totally and utterly stuff up to the point that we are self-destructing, a pointless battle. And I could give you example after example of that. But after hearing the news of another mass shooting in a school in the US this week, my daughter Jess Googled about it, only to discover that this is the 19th US school shooting this year. It's February. 19th school shooting this year. We are a mess. But God sees us. And God has compassion. And he continues to love, and he comes up with plan B. The plan to rescue and redeem and reestablish and rebuild and restore relationship. so that our story ends the same way that it began, the same way that we were supposed to live it. What if our picture of God was reframed this way? What if we knew with absolute certainty that his ultimate plan was and has always been to be with us, to want the very best for us, to love us no matter what, to do whatever it takes to get our attention and connect, to live in relationship with us forever. Because, church, love is what God is. Love is why Jesus came, and love is why he continues to come year after year to person after person. What if we read his word knowing that? What if we did whatever it took to reframe our picture of God with this reality? Because today is a new day, church, and today we can choose to begin to reframe. Even if our childhood framed a picture of a judgmental God, even if past friendships framed a condemning God, today is a new day. Even if our current circumstances, poverty or job have framed a cruel God, today is a new day. Even if our history with the church or Christians has framed a disapproving God, we get to re-choose a new frame today. It might mean a wrestle with God. You might need to have it out with him. But you know what? That's okay, because God can handle us and messed up pictures. He's in the business of reframing. It can be as simple as beginning every day with a choice. Today is a new day. I choose not to believe what I thought of you, God, based on either the framing that people left me with or the framing that I chose myself. Either way, it doesn't matter. Because today I choose to believe the truth of who you are. If we would then just surround ourselves with people who choose the same thing, join a life group, commit to being here every week, get involved, help someone, live out what he has done for us. Because when we do, church, I can promise you that our families will change. Our marriages will change, our workplace will change, our schools will change, our church will change, and our communities will change. But it starts with us. Church, God, we're so grateful for a new day again today. So grateful that every day you give us a new day to choose again. And God, I just pray that we may experience the vast, expansive, infinite, indestructible, yet deeply personal love that has been ours all along. May we discover that his love is as wide as the sky and as small as the cracks in our heart that no one else knows about. And may we know deep in our bones that you love us. We choose you today. We choose love. Amen.